Welcome to my best campaign. I'm Amanda Lee Smith, CEO of Monday Creative, and today we're talking to Nicholas Lammie. Nick is the global brand director for EA Sports FC. Now, EA is a global brand, but if somehow you don't know about it, Electronic Arts is one of the world's leading video game developers and publishers, and EA Sports has created pretty much all of your favorite sports games. PGA Tour, NHL, UFC, NBA Live, Madden NFL, and EA Sports FC, which was formerly FIFA. And that's where Nick comes in. In his role, he's responsible for reaching EA Sports FC's 1 billion fans. That's a lot of fans, by bringing their existing franchise and new projects to market. And it's basically a dream job for anyone who loves video games and loves sport. Nick, I know that is not lost on you. How did you land such an amazing job?
Well, first off, thank you very much for having me. Great to talk again. I would agree with that. It is a dream job. And I think I got very lucky. That said, looking back, it was an entry-level position when I first came in. The job that I'm in today versus the job that I started at, I took steps to try and put my best foot forward. And I think now in hindsight, having interviewed like dozens and dozens of people over the years, I probably did some things that maybe set me apart from others in that, like I went back and reread it actually. I wrote a very, very persuasive cover letter that I think got me in the door to get an interview. And then during the interview, I remember back when print shops were a thing, I was down at the local Kinko's printing out a high gloss color portfolio of all my work to date, just trying to stand out amongst the crowd. It didn't work at the moment. At that time, I was applying for a job that I did not get. I was persistent. And a year later, they actually cold called me back saying, we think we have a fit for you. And that job was an associate product manager on FIFA 13. And since then, when we talk about like the dream job that I'm in today, it was just a series of overtime, raising my hand, taking on projects, doing whatever I could to learn on the job. And I think ultimately that's proven a very successful formula.
Yeah. And it's been an 11-year journey, I think, from that entry-level role to a global director role.
The time blurs, but yes, I believe it's been maybe 12 now.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Really makes a strong case for not using AI to write a cover letter. I know we both probably read a lot of cover letters, and I can tell instantly which ones have that personal touch and which ones are AI generated.
Yeah, the copy and paste of insert title here just doesn't do it.
No, it doesn't. Well, Nick, on that 11-year journey, we met probably about 3 years ago, and you reached out about a special project that was really close to your heart, celebrating and shining a spotlight on the local Indigenous soccer culture right here in Vancouver, where EA Sports has one of its headquarters. And together we worked with the local Musqueam Nation to bring the actual Musqueam soccer pitch into the game's Volta Street Soccer mode, complete with art from 10 different Musqueam artists and custom jerseys. And then EA sponsored some really meaningful improvements to the real life pitch in South Vancouver. What was the motivation behind that project, and why would EA invest in something like that?
It's a great question. And the motivation, I think, was a very personal one, like a very local one. I think you can probably relate to this. Is there was, some pretty shocking revelations that come out in the public spotlight around like some of the Indigenous atrocities that happened before my lifetime. But it was very, very real and very prevalent. And it just felt like something that, if there's a small step that I can take to try and create some connections and try and shine a positive spotlight on what is ultimately like our roots, like the community that was here first. And like over my lifetime, I've been interacted with different Indigenous communities, and I didn't really appreciate it at the time, didn't know it at the time, whether it was like visiting Tofino and going to a Pitsit or a Howsit, playing golf at Musqueam, going up to Squamish. It's things like that where I'm like, you know what, this is just like something that I think warrants us doing something, but I didn't know where to start. And that's where I think you came in. You're uniquely positioned in your agency locally to actually make some of those connections and to provide a perspective, which I think is super key. And then from there, I think the rest is history. What we did and the impact of it It was the most played pitch within that product year. It was one of the most played in kits within that product year. We're talking millions and millions of people getting to experience what you and I know. But it was just a fantastic campaign, a fantastic moment. And it was also the start of a meaningful partnership. I'm actually meeting with a friend of mine from Musqueam community next week for lunch. Like, that's something that, money can't buy.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. I haven't even gotten the update on that yet. So I'm really happy to hear that partnership's still, rolling. And yeah, that was a really special project for us. But, we've been at a brand as long as you have. There's probably a lot of landmark projects. When you think back over your career, what are some of the most meaningful moments or powerful campaigns that you've gotten to be a part of?
Ooh, there's a couple that come to mind. There was a campaign we did. It's probably like my second, third year in. I was like FIFA 14. It was a little bit of like a choose your own adventure. It was almost like Vines before Vines were Vines. Like, if you remember Vines before it became shorts. And it was small bite-sized content that you could piece together through a web experience and create your own football content journey and then publish that to social media. At the time, I was like, this is amazing. It's a great campaign to lead. I'm super excited about it. I think it bombed. Like, I don't think it worked at all. And I think in hindsight, I don't think maybe like internet ubiquity, social media prevalence wasn't as strong as it needed to be for a campaign like that to work. But super compelling, and being able to look back, I'm like, you know what, that was a smart thing to try and ultimately fail at.
Was it too many steps, like doing it on this web-based platform and then trying to get it onto your social media? And at the time, it probably was really hard to post from the web. I mean, you still can't really post from the web onto Instagram, for example.
Yeah, I don't even think Instagram at the time was a platform that we had a little button on for web. I think it was probably the most seamless journey at the time, but the fact that it was multi-step, and it was probably introducing churn along the way. In hindsight, yes. Like, it was also probably introducing complexity or confusion along the way. Like, in hindsight, yes. That said, it was a good learning because we've streamlined it and we've done similar things and to massive success. Another one actually that comes to mind, it was similar time frame. I think we called it user rewards, which is probably why it failed. But it was trying to reward fans for interacting out of the game to reward them in the product. Obviously, we have content. It's a live service. Like, you can go and play Ultimate Team. You can get vanity, or you can get items of players. And we were trying to encourage behavior and interaction, whether it was through social, through web. And I think the program got scuppered after 2 years because it just wasn't showing return. Again, now you look at like every single brand, every single platform, you have a loyalty program. Like, of course you do. But at the time, we were probably ahead of the curve in trying to establish it and introduce it before people really understood what it was and before we even maybe fully appreciated the power of it.
Mm-hmm. We have an episode coming out soon about the development of Nike's loyalty program, actually, and also like the missteps that they made along the way before they finally nailed it. It's a hard thing to get right, and naming is key.
100 user rewards, yeah, doesn't have the ring to it. But thankfully, a couple of programs that maybe didn't work. I think obviously the biggest campaign that I've been across in recent years is the transition from FIFA to FC. And thankfully, that's one that was absolutely a success.
And we're going to talk about that today. So let's dive in. It's pretty rare in someone's career, maybe once or twice, maybe never, that you get to oversee a truly global rebrand that's going to reach that many people, have such a big impact, have so many opinions. And so you got to be deeply a part of that transition from FIFA to EA Sports FC. It touched so many channels. What were the big considerations that you started the process with? Like, what were your goals starting out?
Yeah, we knew it was seismic. We are going and leaving 30 years of brand name equity. And you can argue maybe like the equity behind like the FIFA name, especially in later years, it wasn't as beneficial or as positive as it maybe was in the early stages. Regardless, changing the name, we knew that it needed to be more than like a symbol or a change of symbol. Like, we just didn't want it to be a rebrand. We wanted it to be a symbol of change. And like what we meant by that was it needed to be bigger, it needed to be broader, it needed to be like mission and purpose based, in that not only are we stepping away from what the name is on the box or on an app icon, we're actually taking a step change in how we operate as a brand and how we want to be seen as a brand, as well as the things that we invest behind and support at like a cause-related, social-related, purpose-related perspective.
I mean, it's big. there's always going to be different gauges, I guess, of how something is measured in terms of its success. When you look back at this project, what do you think made it successful?
I mean, part of the that change that I alluded to, we knew that we wanted to have like a standout thing that made sense. We wanted to be instantly recognizable, and we knew that we had EA Sports along with us. And so when I speak about that brand equity that had been built up, yes, FIFA was there, but alongside that was EA Sports, the medallion, the thing that everybody knows, that came with us. And so I think that was a huge part in helping define our success. Is yes, it was a step change, but it wasn't so fundamentally different that people couldn't understand or create a confusion in the marketplace, because they still knew that the parent brand EA Sports was there. That was hugely beneficial. I think the other thing that we did that was incredibly successful, we really leaned into our partnerships. One of the strategies we'd have for a number of years, we used to say, partners are promoters. And that makes sense. And yes, like, hey, promote our game. It comes out every year. What we did as a bit of a step change is we said partners are portals. And that meant we want to use them and their audiences, their fan bases, their followings as portals into like, this is the new brand, this is the new space. And so it was almost like a broader platform to use as a megaphone to talk about the rebrand. And that was massively successful. I think in the moment we announced, we had 200 partners all go live simultaneously across the globe promoting the rebrand. David Beckham posted, Real Madrid, Manchester City, the Premier League, the Bundesliga, Zinedine Zidane, like the who's who of football, all the way down to local level. Like we're talking, I mean, football is so tribal that if you're Notts County, like low division in Premier League, or if you're local like the Whitecaps, everybody rallied around that. And so leaning into our partners was huge, because I think that made the name and the rebrand ubiquitous from day one. And then from there, obviously building blocks and other campaign moments helped solidify what that means. But literally from the get-go, we went absolute mass.
It's truly remarkable that nothing leaked and that everyone released it at the same time. So we know some things went really well. Did anything go wrong? What were the challenges that you encountered in bringing this to life?
Yeah. I think in hindsight, at the time, you'd probably look at it being like, we did everything we could to make it a success. And I still believe that. Internal buy-in was inherently going to be a challenge, in that we are a very large organization, different altitudes, different levels of understanding or full comprehension of what it actually meant. Like the business decision was a super bold one, and still now, and looking back in hindsight, that was probably a challenge that maybe naively we just pushed through, because that was significant. I think the other challenge was just ensuring that we were able to rally all the different teams. Inevitably, things fall off in any given campaign. Only we know that. Like internally, what the idealized approach or campaign was going to look like. Externally, all people see is the content that gets live, the stuff that goes public and when it goes public. So there's probably bits and pieces along the way where you'd look at it and be like, I know what could have been, but that's just an internal thing. I think that's just inevitable when you work at such a scale.
What was the response? Like, did people get it? Was there pushback? Did they embrace it? Maybe give some context to what the rebrand kind of looked like.
Yeah, I think honestly, the purity of it all, like the way that we approach the rebrand and what the mark actually looks like, and the story, the narrative behind it. I think that really helped in terms of landing. Like the response that we saw is that, like, for those that don't know, the mark is a triangle. It's our EA Sports medallion, tried and true, but then alongside that, there's an FC triangle. And what makes that so great is, and so easily recognizable and consumable for a football fan or an FC fan, a video game fan, is triangles are ubiquitous in the sport. whether that's the way that the game's played, like the beautiful game Johan Cruyff and triangles. That's just an ever-present thing. The fact that we called it FC, that is just a ubiquitous moniker for football club around the globe. Even in countries where it's called soccer, most clubs are still called FC. And so that was another thing that was instantly recognizable. And then the other thing that I think made it really successful and resonate so well was the triangle is omnipresent in our products. It is like how the game is built from a graphical level, like it's literally polygon shapes. And I think the most telling thing, the one that's probably most recognizable to people, is it's the triangle sitting over every avatar on the pitch, male, female. It's how you know who you're playing when you play our games. And so I think that made it really successful. That said, whilst I think the reception was really positive from the outset and continues to be, it was also very visceral for a bunch of fans, I think. And that's expected. That's frankly, it's probably what you hope for in anything you do on the marketing side. You want it to evoke feel, and people
they have to give a shit.
Exactly, and they did. And some of those people were very vocal, and some of those people took longer to understand, accept, embrace what we were doing. But that's great because it shows that they care. It shows that we've got a fan base that's pretty avid and willing to talk to us, and willing to also listen, which is great because I think over time, as the game and the brand has evolved, they're along for the journey still with us today. We've grown year on year. Now that we're in year 2 of the rebrand, I think if you look back and say, like, what are signs of success and how do people react? Just less than a month ago, there was a headline in The Economist saying, how FIFA was basically usurped by EA. Like, that's a super powerful pointer to go back, being like, was this a success? At the time it was. It continues to be and continues to build upon that.
Wild. You mentioned the considerations around naming and including FC in it. And maybe I just took for granted that EA Sports FC was the only name you considered, but of course that probably wasn't the case. How did that come to be? What was the decision-making process?
So when we went, we went to a few different agencies, and as you do, like, it was an RFP process. I wanted to get a sense of what people had to say, had to think. And as you go through it, you start to weed out pretty swiftly the things that don't really resonate, that don't make sense. But every agency comes with a unique perspective, which is the best thing about it, is you get to actually see the thought process behind that perspective. And the winning bid, the one that came through, was just the clearest, the cleanest. It was like a light bulb moment where you're like, well, of course this is what it should be, and of course this is what it should look like. But yeah, it's a necessary journey to go on to ultimately get back to like the purest form of it, which was ultimately what we went with.
Yeah. Sometimes the best name is the one that just, says exactly what it is.
It's like the magician's trick, right? It was in front of us the whole time.
If you look back, is there anything you would do differently? Or if there was one thing, what would you do differently?
I mean, this maybe is a little bit like looking back in hindsight, cliche. I probably would have enjoyed it more. Like what we did was monumental. Like, it was a significant thing within the industry, probably one of the biggest like rebrands in the entertainment space. And in the moment, you're just thinking about like the next hour, the next day, the next week, and it's the next campaign. And all of a sudden, like I said, you get a year and a bit removed, and you're seeing The Economist write about it. You're seeing like a headline in The Guardian and the New York Times article. And you're like, my goodness, that was big. A friend of mine, he made a comment the other day. He's like, this is going to be in textbooks in university classes. And I'm like, maybe you're right. But it is one of those things that if that's the conversation amongst colleagues in the industry, it was so big. And I don't think maybe we had full appreciation of it at the time. Like, I know that's maybe not the most different thing in terms of what we actually would have done with the rebrand, but it's more of a personal journey, I think, that went on.
Yeah. I mean, when you're working 16-hour days, it's really hard to pause and just recognize you're doing something pretty epic in the industry.
Most definitely.
That's kind of I mean, that's probably been a large part of what's been your success is your focus and drive and your ability to push through that. And also it's what causes us to sometimes not recognize those major celebratory moments.
Yes, but at least I'm doing it now.
So, okay, that sounds like a big takeaway. Do you have any other big learnings from that campaign that you're bringing forward with you?
Yeah, definitely. I think realizing the power of our brand was we knew it, but I don't think we ever fully appreciated it. And I think that's also just a bit of our corporate culture in that we over a number of years developed very strong product level brands. And because of that, we maybe didn't acknowledge or appreciate the overarching company and the sports brand within it that sits behind the brand. But I think that was a big one is EA Sports has such pedigree, and that's massive. And so I think it was just a reaffirmation that had somewhat maybe ebbed away in people's minds about how great it is to be part of the EA Sports collective. It's super powerful. And so I think that was a big learning, which was great just to re-educate because a number of people have joined since. And now all of a sudden, like it's a really big thing that we rally around internally, which is super cool. I think the other one, and again, we probably knew this, but we probably let it slip a little bit, is the power of our partnerships. Relationships are so key, and we have so many of them. We're so uniquely positioned to tell a collective football story that frankly no other brand can. Like we can show an Adidas athlete wearing Nike boots in a Puma kit. We can do that. No other brand can. You know, we can put them alongside a retired player or a female player. We can bring them together on a set and create a piece of content. It's really unique, the position that we get to sit in. And so I think that was just a big learning again, is like we lean into that, and we should cherish the fact that we have it because it's such a powerful part of who we are.
That is such good insight. You guys really do have some freedoms that don't come when you're in-house at one of those brands that you just named.
Totally.
So you get to make some kind of cross partnership magic happen.
Yes, we did that this year. We brought together retired players and current players, and I want to say it's 17 different trophies from across the world of football based on our licensing and marketing relationships. And that ultimately formed the cover of our Ultimate Edition for FC.
Wow, that's wild. Okay, tell me more about that. What's the Ultimate Edition?
So it's a premium version of our HD product, our console product. The premium version cover art was our cover star, Jude Bellingham. It was Bonmati, female ambassador, phenomenal footballer. It was Buffon coming in to set, recently retired, but like Italian hero. We had David Beckham on set, and then we had my favorite player of all time, Zinedine Zidane, and them all coming together and like organizing a talent schedule. Like it's hard enough to get a PA where one, they show up on time, two show up at all, but then decide to show up together, like actually want to be present because a footballing peer or somebody that they're keen to meet is also going to be there, and bring them all together, and then having them on set and walk around and be like, I remember when I won that trophy in 2002. Or like picking it up and being like, yeah, that's our team right there. All these different moments where we created just a bit of nostalgia and pride within what they've done or what they're still doing today. It was amazing. And so I think that was a really powerful story that we told at the announce and then through launch this campaign. But yeah, it's just testament to, again, the power of our partnerships.
Yeah. When you first started describing it, there was no part of me that thought you had all of those people on set at the same time, but it sounds like you somehow did.
There was others too that actually didn't make the cover that were present as well, just because they wanted to be.
Yeah, that's really, really incredible. You mentioned, this is kind of an aside, but I'm sure you're seeing this at EA Sports, just the massive increase in interest in women's sports. Are you feeling the effects of that? And is that starting to shape how you view the game?
Very much. And I'd like to think we're doing our part to try and elevate the other half of the game that hasn't got the spotlight it deserves over the last number of years. As we step into our FC world, are just further bolstering what that means in additional investment, additional exposure. Like I mentioned, we have athlete ambassadors from the women's game. They're pretty much ubiquitous across the console experience. We've integrated them into whether that's regular league play with the addition of multiple different women's leagues. They're in our most popular mode, Ultimate Team, integrated into career mode this year. You can now play male and female on a pitch together on the same squad. And what we've seen, and we knew, like, one, it was the right thing to do. There's so much opportunity and upside in that side of the sport. And so again, just being able to use the power of our brand to shine that spotlight. But what we've, I think, realized is we're actually creating a new generation of fandom across both male and female as people learn more about them because of the size and scale of our product and our fan base. So that's been super powerful. And then alongside that, investment within the sport to try and make sure that we're doing a multi-year plan and program as FC to ensure that, it's not just a one and done, but there's an ongoing, persistent legacy there.
Yeah, that conversation kind of between the game and what's happening in real life is so fascinating that, you can be boosting fandom of women's sports through the game that then will translate into, ticket sales, viewership, celebration of these incredible athletes. It's really exciting to think about. You've already given us a good peek at this, but what's coming up next for the EA Sports FC brand? What are you excited about that's coming down the line?
The most exciting, you hit it in the top. The most exciting thing is, we have a publicly stated aspiration to reach 1 billion fans. And it's a wildly ambitious number. But when you start thinking, there's 4 billion, maybe 5 billion football fans in the world. And then you think about the ubiquity of smart devices and everybody has a cell phone. You start to think about it through those numbers. It's maybe not that aspirational. It actually starts to become somewhat achievable, or at least we believe it is. And so what we know as a franchise is we're not going to do that through a singular product on a console alone. It's not going to be where someone sits down with a controller in their hand, an expensive console, and a massive TV sitting on the couch. That's not going to get to that scale. What is going to get to that scale is exploration into the free-to-play space, the mobile gaming space. And frankly, into, if it's not gaming, more of a passive interactive space. And so we're exploring new opportunities now that we own a bit more of our own destiny as FC in building out across the franchise. I think something that maybe people don't fully appreciate, and I don't think we fully appreciated either before when we were FIFA, we had multiple products using the FIFA name. And they were somewhat left to operate on their own because they were built for differentiated audiences, different regions. What we decided to do when we became FC was we needed to firmly wrap our arms around anything that's going to be FC needs to be represented a certain way. It needs to have a look and a feel and a tone that goes along with it. And so that was, I think, the biggest unlock is we're going to operate as a franchise in the spirit of trying to get to that 1 billion fans. And so we have a free-to-play PC experience in Asia. We have a massive mobile game in FC Mobile. It's actually our single biggest played game through user base. But it somewhat just sort of existed alongside. But now the power of bringing them together is we can co-market and we can create these meaningful moments that matter across the entirety of the franchise that show up in a Korea or in a Brazil or in a Germany the same way at the same time. And I think that's super exciting. So being more connected and more definitive in what we're trying to do from a marketing perspective just provides efficiency and budget and efficiencies and resource, which is great. The other exciting thing we're doing is we know the existing portfolio is not going to be enough. We're exploring new IP. So there's a couple of things that are coming out. They're in various states of development, but there's a couple of new mobile products that are looking to go live in different regions in the months ahead that are unlike anything you would have seen from a past FC experience. They're custom built for what we believe are untapped market opportunities. Like I said, differentiated games for differentiated motivation sets, because we know football fandom and affinity isn't created equal. People have different passions within the video gaming space. And so we want to layer in the authenticity that we bring through football to a different gaming experiences.
That sounds like a lot. And what I really heard, especially when you were talking about some of those new products that you're bringing to different markets, is how deeply connected brand and product need to be. So creating that consistency, making sure that the franchise is true across all of these different markets and all of these different channels. Brand has never been so important on the product side.
Totally. If it doesn't hit a certain level of criteria that we would deem warrants FC, then it won't be an FC product. And I think being able to have that clarity and that razor helps, because if you can't live within that, then it would be a fractured experience, and fans wouldn't necessarily appreciate the internal reasoning why. They would just look at something saying, that doesn't look right, that doesn't feel right, that doesn't sound right, and it creates confusion in the marketplace.
Yeah. It also puts a lot of pressure on you as the global brand leader. In your role, there's probably a lot of pressure to continually keep things fresh, keep things relevant. Where do you look for inspiration? How do you stay fresh and motivated in your role?
It's a great question. I've realized over my time here, it's pretty much like clockwork. I change roles about every 4 years. So I think that helps, because new relationships, new experiences, new parts of the business, and getting to do something new, like that's fuel unto itself. And so that's super inspiring, because I think the people that you work with, they love the sport, they love the industry. And like, how can you not be excited and inspired by that? I also selfishly, I've been a football fan my entire life. I've played since I was 3. I played EA Sports titles, FIFA games in the past, pretty much exclusively. And so, pretty hard not to get excited every day when you get up, because then you know what you're coming in for, which is awesome. I think within that, though, getting to the new things that I mentioned, that's, I think, the big one that inspires me a lot. I also think knowing that we are charting our own course now, we're just in year 2. And so you can almost view us as we're a mega upstart, in that we are defining new things and we are creating those new experiences. And those new experiences, they need a fresh perspective and they need to look and feel a certain way. And yes, we've got our master brand, but then each product deserves its own nuanced version of that, or its own unique narrative and how we go to market, because the features are different, the modalities of play are different, and the players are expecting to see and feel something different. And so being able to shape campaigns that are interconnected but differentiated is super exciting. And it fuels me every day to come in and get to author that and bring that to life with the team.
Yeah. In some ways it's this behemoth, but you are still in startup mode, and there's probably so many opportunities you haven't gotten to explore yet.
Exactly that.
So as you're kind of keeping your fingers in what's happening in the broader industry, are there any trends or shifts in the industry that you're paying attention to that are on your radar, keeping you excited?
The most probably overused term right now is AI. The funny thing for us is AI has been part of our industry forever. When you play the game, you're playing for the most part against an AI competitor. Sure, now we're getting much more social and connected, and there's a lot of co-op play, but we've had AI teams that you would go and play against. And so it's always been there. And I think just building upon that, we've taken steps towards machine learning, and the way that the game actually gets created now is really deeply into that space. And so I think that's one where it's maybe not so much a trend as it is just exponential gains that we're going to see in the years ahead as the product gets sharper and sharper and much more realistic in the spaces where we want it to, and in the spaces where we're doing something different, it will look different entirely. So I think that's one. I think the other one that maybe it is a trend. I don't like to view it that way, because you hit it in the up top, and I still feel this way, is you need to be purpose driven in everything you do. And maybe brands are just catching up, and more are realizing or appreciating that that's a super powerful way to approach things. But it's sort of been my mantra, is that you have to have a reason for doing anything. And that can be at a very macro level in like, what is your purpose as a brand? Sure. But then also, okay, well, what is your purpose as a social channel? What is your purpose as web? What is your purpose as CRM? Like, what's your purpose having a post with a partner? If you don't know why you're doing something, then you're going to probably more often than not get it wrong, or it's not going to feel connected to the thing that you're trying to achieve. And so I think that's one where it's nice to see, maybe it's just reaffirming of like my thoughts and beliefs as a marketer, but yeah, purpose-driven marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely seen you live that out, just even in the passion that you brought to the Musqueam project. It was so clear that there was a bigger picture that was driving the decisions, which was great. I'm going to close this out with one final question, which is, what is the best piece of branding or marketing advice you've ever been given?
It might be connected to the purpose bit. Maybe that's where it came from. But I think always being able to answer why. It's one thing to have an idea or like a thought against something, but you have to be able to back it up with like a rationale. And that could be data informed, or that could be like key insight informed. But being able to answer why in marketing, because how many campaigns have you seen, Amanda, over like your career where it's just like, well, that made no sense, like, or that was just like a major firework and then it's gone. I think answering against the why, I think, is probably some of the best advice I was ever given. Otherwise, it could just be empty words or an empty asset on a page. I think that, and also it's probably interconnected, always being prepared. Any room you go in or any meeting you're attending, you need to be buttoned up. Like marketing within various organizations, they might be perceived differently depending on where you go, but like you might have a commercial organization or the financial side of things, the development or product side of the businesses. And so marketing is kind of just a catch-all term. But I actually think marketing ends up becoming, because of that, the de facto leaders of the business, in that we stitch together all the elements of like, well, commercial want to price it at this, and the product want to push this feature, and finance are saying you can only spend X. We almost have to be the adults in the room to bring all that, triage it, and say, okay, well, this is what we're going to do across all the things that matter to you, and we'll tidy it up in a public-facing package. So I think always being prepared, any room you go in, because in the end, so many teams look to you for the answer.
Yeah. And often marketing is who knows the audience the best as well, because you've spent so much time defining it, and that should shape every single part of the business.
100%. Totally agree.
Nick, where can people find you online? Is there somewhere where they can keep track of you?
I'm a very infrequent contributor to LinkedIn, but I think that's probably the default. Otherwise, like, time is precious, and I'm not too active on social media handles. I might follow, but that's more for brand and marketing and understanding as opposed to engaging it with myself.
Yeah, well, it's a great lesson for all of us. Thank you so much, Nick, for your time. I always appreciate our chats. So much good content and learnings in here. This was fun.
Likewise. Appreciate talking to you, Amanda.